All right, so for the 12-8 assignment, again, you can start and stop this video at any point just to kind of help. What I'm gonna have us do is start by opening up our picture of Steve from yesterday. So I'm gonna click on the top left corner where it says File, I'm gonna click Open, and I'm gonna click on my PSD file from yesterday. Again, there were the two files to save it as, the PSD, which is that big hefty file with all of the layers and information, and the JPEG or PNG that you put on Google Classroom. If you forgot to save it as a PSD yesterday, that's fine. You can make it work for today. But like for the next part of this, you will need to make sure to also save it as a PSD. So this is where we're going to start with. The first thing that I'm going to do is if you notice that you have two layers, I don't know if you need to do this. I have a feeling that it would be just helpful to do. If you notice that you have two layers, I'm going to right click and we're on one of the layers, and then I'm just going to click merge down. So that way you just have one layer to deal with. If you don't see more than one layer in that space, you don't need to worry about this step. But again, if you see two different layers over here, we can just make life a little bit easier for ourselves by right-clicking on one of them and just click merge down. That is only if you see two different layers there. Not everyone's going to have that show up. So what we're going to do is we are going to use a special tool to make the background disappear. So I'm going to click at the very top. So we have File, Edit, Image, Layer, Select. I'm going to click Select, and then I'm going to click Magic Cut. And like it took my computer a minute to load this the first few times. So like give your computer a minute. So what we're going to do right now, first thing, this is basically like we said in the do now. The green is the area that is the foreground. That is Steve the alien. The red is going to be the background that we want to get rid of. The gray is if you need an eraser, it's there. If you need to zoom in or zoom out, you can like scroll with your mouse pad. You can also click on the little plus sign to zoom in, click on the minus sign to zoom out. You can click on the little brush up here to make the size of it bigger or smaller. You guys are pretty comfortable with that by now. And then the other thing that I'm going to do to start us off, where it says border at 3, we're just going to bring that down to a 0. This is just going to help us just to make sure that we have the precision that we need. If you need to move the picture around, what you can do is click on this little hand, and then you can just drag it around. So that way you can get a better view. So the first thing I notice is that there's like this weird red line up here. I'm going to click on this little gray square, and I'm just going to erase this red line because that's not part of the background. That's Steve's marvelous forehead. So like that would be not nice if we just erased some of his forehead. So you can already see it's starting to pick up a little bit more of where he is. So now I can zoom back in and just get a little bit more precise. I'm going to click on the green, and I like to start big and then add details. So I'm going to start with it on like 150. I'm just going to cover, I'm kind of avoiding the edges. I'm just going to press with my mouse and then just drag it around. Again, I'm just starting with the big areas first, kind of like if I was painting, I would start with the biggest brush and then go into the detail brushes. You can see on the right-hand side what it's looking like. And I can also stamp it. So like if you don't want to drag it and you just want to stamp it, that's also fine. So I'm filling in that foreground bit with green. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the red, and I'm going to do the same thing for the background. I'm going to try to cover as much of the background as I can without getting too close. And you'll see why in a second about the close comment. So again, I start with it pretty big. And then what I can do is now I can go back into my green, make the brush a lot smaller, and just move a lot more carefully through it just to get the edges. So here's something to note. If you get them too close to each other or overlapping, you get this weird pop-up. Green and red should never touch. Erase it with gray. Like, okay, sir. So I'm going to go into my gray. I'm just going to erase it because I don't want Photo P to be mad at me. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. So I'm just going to cover that back up. And same thing, I'm just going to go back in with the red So I want to leave just like a tiny little bit between the two of them. And I'm actually just kind of like stamping circles, I think is like, honestly, the way that gives me the least headaches when I'm working on these really, really close borders. Instead of just dragging my mouse around in case I make a mistake. Whoops, I don't know how that just happened. So you know what? I'm just gonna make this a little bit smaller. So we're gonna just take a few minutes to do this because if they're touching anywhere, it's just gonna keep giving you these annoying error messages. All right, so I'm gonna go back in and just try to clean this up. Again, you'll notice that I like to just kind of stamp it so I can get it pretty precise. We're gonna really take our time with this because there's nowhere we need to rush to be. This is our main goal for today. Next class on Monday, we are going to get to actually, whoops, accidentally right-clicked, put in a background of our choice. But for today, we are just going to focus on adding in the green, adding in the red, and getting it as perfect or close to perfect as possible. So right now I can see on the right-hand side, it's looking pretty good. There's some areas that just need a little bit of extra love. So I'm just gonna, whoop, did not mean to put that there. Oh no, that was an accident. Unfortunately, it doesn't have an undo button up here. Um, oh, they're touching over there. So that gray erase is the closest that we're gonna get. If you need to just completely start over, you can click on clear, but like don't do that unless you desperately have to. Because right now, if I clicked clear, all of this work would be lost, and I would be very sad because it takes a lot of effort to get it this precise. Again, this is where if you're using a touchpad, having a stylus can be really helpful just to get a really precise line. If you don't have one, then you are doing what I'm doing of just either stamping or going really slow with clicking and dragging. All right. Think I'm just about done. Noticing that there are some kind of like fuzzy bits, so I'm just trying to get those as smoothed out as I can. I don't want any fuzzy bits. All right, so I see that there's a little space next to the eye. All right, that's much better. And then just gonna get a little bit closer over here because that's kind of bugging me. All right, cool. So again, I can make this a little bit more precise on the left-hand side, but for the sake of right now, I'm just gonna click OK in the top right corner. So you're gonna notice that it made it as a new layer. So now you have these two layers. You have the background layer, which is the original picture. And now you have your lovely foreground, which is your picture of Steve. You're probably wondering what that like striped pattern is, and that is basically just means that it is a transparent background. That means if you held this up in front of a blue piece of paper, you wouldn't see through Steve's face, but you would see through the rest of the picture to the blue paper underneath. So like if I were to insert like let's say file, open in place, you don't need to do this, but just to like show you as an example, if I were to do file, open and place, like if I were to put this behind this, you'll actually notice like it's transparent behind Steve's head, just so that way you guys can see what that means. I'm going to just undo that. Smart placing object. All right, so what you're going to do now, again, you're going to do this two-step save thing. This is really, really important so that next week, if you don't have it as two layers next week, you're going to have to do the whole thing over again. So that's why I'm just going to like really stress that you want to have the two-step save. The first step is file, save as PSD. You want to save that PSD because that's the only way you're going to be able to open up the layers. because otherwise it's just going to be one layer and you're going to have to get rid of the background again. So right now I have this as its own layer. So I have the PSD downloaded. The next thing I'm going to do is slightly different. So between JPEG and PNG, which are the only ones that you guys know can really be uploaded to Google Classroom for these assignments, JPEGs can't let you see through it. So JPEG doesn't have the option of transparent backgrounds. PNG does. So we're going to upload it as a PNG to Google Classroom. So I'm going to click File, Export as PNG, and you can see it actually has it as a transparent background still. So I'm going to click Save. And then that is what I'm going to upload on Google Classroom for the 12-8 assignment. Again, you are going to need that two-step save. So the PSD saved to your computer and the PNG file uploaded to Google Classroom. So that way I know you uploaded following the correct steps.